Aloha, my name is Hugh Landis. As a new Landis Home Service customer, I want to show you what you can expect from our landscaping services. One of the things we do when we take on a new property is do an inspection of the lawn. As we walk through this new property, and we look here, this is supposed to be a Bermuda lawn, and it's been infiltrated by a lot of different weeds. We have down here, we have goosegrass, we've got sedge, we've got some crabgrass, we've got a little bit of everything and not much Bermuda. Down here a little further, we've got some wood sorrel in here, and all these grasses, all these weeds will have to be treated. There's probably 3 or 4 different herbicides that we'll use to treat this. We'll eradicate the weeds, come back in and fertilize and get the grass lawn back to where it's supposed to be. One of the very first things we do when we take on a new property is to do soil samples. And the reason that we do that is we need to thoroughly understand what the soils are, what they need and don't need, so that we can develop a fertilizer program. The pH may be high, we might need to bring the pH down, it may need phosphorus, it may have too much potassium, but we don't know that until we do these samples and send them off to the lab and have the lab do an analysis. That analysis goes back to our soil scientist on Oahu, and then he makes recommendations for us for that specific property. And then we get those recommendations that I'll discuss a little bit later, and we follow those recommendations, and we get the property in sync. That being said, I'm going to start my sampling, and I do that with this tool here. It's a soil sampler, and we will take it and we'll auger it down, usually 4 to 5 inches, and that gives us a good representation of what's going to be in that soil. And we'll do this, and we'll take the soil, we'll put it in the bucket, and we'll do that about 20 times, and we'll mix it up, and then we put it in a plastic bag and send it off to the lab. When we get our analysis back from the laboratory and we get our recommendation from the agronomist, it goes into our folder, and each of our customers has their own section, and we keep the reports in here along with the recommendations so that we know what it is we're doing. In other words, if the property is high in phosphorus, high phosphorus may prevent iron uptake. Now, if we just scatter a general fertilizer that you're going to buy at the store and it has phosphorus in it, we're compounding our problem. So we need to know these things so that we're doing the right thing to the soil. We're going to examine this lawn and inspect it for thatch buildup. Basically what happens is not all lawns create a thatch layer, but some do, and when they do, the thatch needs to be removed. It's a real breeding ground for disease and pests, and when the thatch layer gets extremely thick, it can even inhibit water and nutrients from getting to the soil. So we're going to look at this one and see exactly what a thatch layer looks like. Now here you can see the green, where the green ends, and this brown layer of, it's actually stolons and roots that basically have not decomposed, and consequently they build this layer between the soil and the green part of the grass. And that is what we're going to try and eliminate today, and we're going to verticut or dethatch the lawn. It's good to do this on a lawn like this every year, And we try and inspect all of our lawns on a regular basis to make sure that they're not getting this thatch layer buildup. One of the very first things we do on a new property is to do a thorough inspection and inventory of all the plant material to see what kind of condition it's in and see if there's any insects, bugs, disease, fungus that might be prevalent in the property and something that we need to deal with right away. Hawaii is just inundated with a variety of bugs, and they just thrive here in this climate. So it's a constant due diligence, if you will, to keep track of these things. And here's a small dwarf plumeria that we are looking at, and sure enough, it's been infested with whitefly. But with due diligence, we can keep it under control and keep it from getting out of hand. It can do some pretty serious damage and cause other insects to be attracted to the plant as well. And a lot of these insects, in fact, they all secrete what we locally like to call a honeydew, and that's usually on the top side of the leaf, and it creates a stickiness, one that attracts ants. I'm sure there's ants involved in this particular situation, and because ants like the honeydew, they help spread the infestation. Now, the insects typically are on the underside of the leaves. A lot of times you don't see them because they're not on top of the leaves, they're underneath it. And so the first thing that we might do in this case would be to take one of our specialized washers that actually sprays underneath. It actually sprays in 360 degrees, but it allows us to wash the leaf from the underneath side. It squirts in 360 degrees, so if we stick it in here, we know, you can see the whiteflies coming out of there right now. You can see them flying around. They don't like to be washed. The next thing we do is to apply a systemic pesticide. The tree absorbs the pesticide through the roots, takes it up through the stalk and stem and out to the leaves where it can do its job. One of the last things we'll do in treating a infested plant is to apply a spray, and usually we'll use a superfine oil, and sometimes we'll mix a commercial pesticide with it. And when we do that, we want to make sure that our workers are protected against any pesticide residue. When we do spray, we spray the underneath side of the leaves because that's where the pests reside, and a lot of applicators will not take the time to spray the underneath side, and it doesn't do any good if you don't. We might win the battle, but the war is on the side of the insects. So it's something that we have to be on the alert for all the time, and watching them very diligently. What I wanted to talk about now is the irrigation. And the irrigation is probably the most important thing that we manage on any property. Water is extremely expensive here at Hualalai and Kukio, and a lot of people don't realize this is actually a desert zone. We get 7 inches or less of rain right here, although they may get 50 right up the road. This area is really a desert, and it's important to not only to the health and well-being of the plants and the plant material. Proper monitoring of the irrigation is extremely important to the cost, the monthly cost of operating the home. And this is a typical controller. This happens to be Hunter, but all the homes that we manage have this type of control system. And what it allows us to do is to manage each irrigation zone individually. Now, this particular property has 27 zones. We have some properties that have almost 50 separate irrigation zones. And if they're not running properly, if there's a broken head or a leaky valve, that means two things: improper irrigation and more expense to the owner. So one of the first things we'll do, even on a new property or an existing property, is we'll go through on a regular basis and check the irrigation system. Now, each one of the properties that we take over, we will make a map of the property and map out each individual zone, and it's numbered. And so we can take this map, and if we want to go to the back of the property and check a zone that looks like it's not getting the proper amount of water, we can do that. We know exactly what zone it is from this map. So that's one of the things that we do with each property, and we keep a map inside so that it's for quick reference. Another thing that we like to do on these controllers is we will split the program so that one program will operate specifically for the shrubbery and trees, and the other program will operate for the turf and the lawn areas. And that's important because there are times when you need to water the lawns more, the shrubbery less, and vice versa. And if they're all on the same program, that's hard to do. So we split it up into two programs. We've found a lot of the properties that we've taken over, by proper water management, we've been able to cut the water bills actually in half. And that's a substantial savings to the homeowner. Whether you're a new or an existing customer of Landis Home Services, you can expect this level of detailed care day in and day out.